All right, so let's talk about reading the periodic table. So I showed you the periodic table, and let me just get to that again. Here's a periodic table, right? And we're going to see how it's all broken down a little bit. But what I really want you to focus on right now are just all the little squares. So these squares, all the different periodic tables are drawn differently, right? There's different styles and different things are highlighted. But in this case, it's a very simple one. But in most periodic tables, in these little squares, you'll get the same amount of information. Again, this is a very simple one, but in most of them, you'll get something like this in each of the little squares. So, based off of these little squares in the periodic table, you can get a lot of information off of that. And for the exams, you will be asked to get this information off of these squares on the periodic table. So again, the top number, and it's usually going to be, there's going to be two numbers. The one that I just showed you, this one right here, only has the one number, right? Again, not a very, it's a very simple periodic table. But most of them will have two different numbers on it. We already talked about the atomic number, which I said is kind of like the address, right? If you ever look at the box that has an 8, like here, you always see, so 8 right here, you know it's going to be oxygen every time, right? So that's what that is. That is the atomic number, and that tells you the number of protons, but it also tells you where it rests on the periodic table, right? And then the other number that's going to be on there is usually going to be it's always going to be the larger number, and the larger number is always going to be the atomic mass, right? Because the atomic mass is protons plus neutrons. So remember that. That's what that means right here. Whenever you see that you have the atomic mass down here, remember atomic mass is just protons plus neutrons. And let me move this up a little bit just so you can see it a little bit better. So right there, the atomic mass is protons plus neutrons. That's what that means. So just bring it like right here. All right. So 15.99, again, protons plus neutrons is what gives you that 15.99. So again, the atomic mass always has to be the larger number. It is always the larger of the two. So atomic mass and atomic number, atomic mass is always going to be, whoops, and I was trying to write larger. It's not very pretty, but it just is always going to be larger, sorry about that, than the atomic number. All right. So again, based off of this, you can get the atomic number, and you know that's the number of protons, and then you get the atomic mass, you know that that's protons plus neutrons. And then this giant O right here is the element symbol for oxygen, and then here it's just the actual name for it, which is oxygen. And so the atomic mass, as I mentioned, is the mass of one atom. And I said earlier that in the atomic mass, we only consider protons and neutrons because the electrons are they don't have enough mass to actually consider it as part of the atomic mass. So for the atomic mass, it's only protons plus neutrons. All right. So something to remember, though, remember this because this is going to help you out through a lot of the different problems that we're going to be doing. So I'm going to add this right here that atomic number, so this is again the 8 that we have right here, is usually going to be equal to, or is always going to be equal to, whoops, the proton number, right? That's first and foremost what the atomic number is telling you. But what you're also going to see is that if you know this, you also know that it's telling you the number of electrons. So in this case, the atomic number is 8, as you see right here. It means that there are 8 protons. But if you know that there are 8 protons, that's the rule, is that if there are 8 protons for this type of atom, there's 8 electrons, right? So remember this, atomic number equals proton number equals electron number. And in most cases, except for the case of isotopes, which we saw earlier, it's usually also going to be the neutron number, right? So all these things mean the same. They tell you all the same thing, right? The atomic number is 8. That means there are 8 protons, there are 8 electrons, and there are 8 neutrons, right? So again, the atomic mass just tells us how much one atom weighs in atomic mass units. So it's so small, we can't measure it in grams, we can't measure it in ounces, we can't measure it in pounds. So we have to make up our own unit to measure this in, and that is AMU, atomic mass unit. So in this case, oxygen has an atomic mass of 15.999, or you can round it up to 16, right? 16 AMUs, atomic mass units.